Great, thank you very much. Thanks for having me today. We okay with the sound? Perfect, okay. What we want to do today is talk a little bit about a particular program that's available to you as academics for exchange to Germany. And we'll talk more about that as we go through today. But one of the things I want us to initially consider is why would you want to do an exchange program anyway, right? And of course, there are a lot of benefits to you personally, right? You raise your own professional, hi, come on in, personal and professional development, right? You grow your own network, which of course has implications for you and possible jobs, has implications for you as you're recruiting grad students or ultimately recruiting other faculty members. Of course, to add to and expand the discipline is a part of that as well, but to a certain extent what I want us to focus on is that it also helps raise the profile of your own unit. Right? For you going and serving at another university, it raises the reputation of your own unit. And in fact, increasingly there seems to be, at least here in the state of Florida, the desire for faculty members to be a part of these because it helps the university itself meet some internal and external metrics in relation to academic engagement. And so just to give you a little history about FSU, maybe you've run across this already, but I'm sure you've heard in a variety of forums that FSU is attempting to breach the top 25 in public universities in the nation, according to a number of polls or markers. In 2012, they started a program called the Extraordinary Accomplishment Program. And at the same time, they started this office for faculty recognition. And the goal was to recognize and more than that, encourage faculty to pursue some particular major awards. And those were mostly the major awards that are identified by the National Research Council, but also FSU identified some as well. So these are awards like the National Book Award, the Pulitzer Prize, the Nobel Prize, Fulbright, just to name a few of those, the national membership in the National Academy of Sciences, things of that nature. If you want, you can check out the full list on the FSU website. There's about 1,300 or so awards that are listed that FSU encourages faculty members to pursue, again, because of the prestige that it brings to the university. In fact, the express rationale is that the awards benefit the university as a whole by enhancing our stature. Okay. As I mentioned, there are several exchange. Part of in addition to the prizes and fellowships, there are exchange programs that are listed on the Extraordinary Accomplishment list. Chief for here in the United States is the Fulbright program that's run through the Center for the International Exchange of Scholars. Right, it's been around for a long time, sending people in the United States to other countries, but also providing funds for other scholars in other countries to come here as well. On the list, there are several throughout Europe. There are two major ones that several of their programs are listed in Germany: the Humboldt Foundation and the DAAD. Or as you can see, the Deutsche Akademische Ausstag-Dienst. And my German is horrible, but yet I've been there a couple of times. Why Germany? Anybody have an idea why Germany is so important when it comes to academic exchanges? Any clue? Well, arguably the first research university was started in Germany back in the early 1800s. The University of Göttingen was really the prototype for the research university of today. They decided we want our professors to actually add to knowledge rather than just disseminate the knowledge that we already have. So the modern research university really has its roots in Germany, and because of that, research universities are incredibly important still in the intellectual life of Germany, and of course that importance has spread throughout the world. The university system in the United States very much took that approach when setting up many of their in particular post-war research universities. The particular program that we're talking about today was started in Germany back in the 20s. It started with some social scientists coming to the United States, really under the auspices of the broader Fulbright program, kind of an exchange that they started there. DAAD stopped during World War II, but then started reformulated pretty closely soon thereafter. It is the German agency for support of international academic cooperation. They call themselves the German National Agency because it's publicly funded. It's privately controlled, but it's publicly funded. The Humboldt receives a lot of private funds, but DAAD is a public institution. They give out more than 65,000 fellowships each year, supporting over 120,000 faculty, students, and researchers, making it the largest grantor of international academic mobility support in the world, right? Even bigger than Fulbright. So, incredible opportunities are available to them for you now as a doctoral student, but of course, once you begin your academic career. Let me tell you a little bit about my experiences with them and the opportunities that I've had, and we can answer any questions after Dr. Everhard continues. A little bit of a story, but my research, I study narratives. I see the world through narratives. I study entertainment narratives, so most of the time when I give talks, I tell stories, and so I'm going to start with a story. My history with DAAD, at least for me, in my mind, traced back to 1999. I had just graduated from the University of Alabama. I had spent a year at Indiana University on a visiting line. I had just accepted the job here at FSU to start in the fall of '99. So I was in transition from IU to FSU, and I went back to Tuscaloosa with this research institute that I had worked at before and was running a big research program during the summer. So I was in Tuscaloosa, late May '99. In the office that I have there, in walks this guy whose name I knew. His name Peter Vorderer. I doubt you've run across him. If you're in communication, you definitely know who he is. I really didn't know who he was at the time. I'd read some of his work. But he was the director of the School for Music and Theater, it didn't have media in the name, in Hanover, Germany at the time. And director of the Institute for Journalism and Communication Research. He happened to be in Tuscaloosa working with one of my former major professors. They were developing one of the first entertainment science conferences that was going to take place in Germany. And Peter came in, introduced himself. Kind of a gaggle of doctoral students came along, and we got in this conversation. It was the week after Star Wars: The Phantom Menace was released. Peter said, "I'm going back to Germany tomorrow. This movie will not be in Germany for many months. Does anybody want to go?" The doctoral students put their heads down. No, sorry. I said, sure, right? So torrential downpour. It was one of the hardest rainfalls, and I've seen a lot of hard rainfalls in Tuscaloosa. Unbelievable rainfall. But we went and we totally hit it off. Both intellectually but personally. And that really began this, really a 16-plus year friendship and collaboration that I've had with Peter. Now, Peter leaves Hanover. He goes and starts the entertainment research program at the University of Southern California. He then goes on to the Free University of Amsterdam, and now he's back in Germany at Mannheim. During the time, he's been the president of our most prestigious institution, or professional organization, the International Communication Association. He's been unbelievably gracious and invited me to keynote talks in Spain and China and all over the world. And it goes back to that day that we met each other in Tuscaloosa over Star Wars. So this is my first introduction to the IJK. Fast forward to 2008. I'm an associate professor here. Happy as can be. I get a phone call, well actually I got an email, from the then new director of the IJK, the guy that took Peter's place. Peter had been working with a lot of doctoral students, and they had continued his work in entertainment research there at the IJK. They had all graduated, and they needed one semester that we want to continue this work, and Peter and his students say, you're the guy to help us do that. And so they invited me to come as a guest professor for one semester in the spring of 2008, which I did. Left Tallahassee in early April, and we'll talk about the German academic calendar a little later. It's a little different than ours, and was there until August and taught a full semester in the IJK. Fast forward a few more years to 2013. One of Peter's former students is now back as director of the program and said, Art, we would love to have you come again and serve as a guest professor. The only problem is we don't have any money to do this. We want you to come back and serve as a guest professor in the IJK. He said, but what we're going to try to do is get the DAAD to pay for you to come and visit with us. I said, okay, fine. He said, we've got a lot of paperwork to do, but we'll let you know. And so one of the programs that DAAD has is this visiting professorship program. And this is a program likely for you that, if you're interested, will be later in your career. But it's an example of the kind of work that they do. This particular program, as all of their programs do, are focused on strengthening their international presence and welcoming educators from North America, right? So it's for folks working in the U.S. With guest lectureships. Now, the thing about this program is that individual units have to identify someone and then make a proposal to the DAAD to bring them in, to get the funding to bring them in. Now, the competition is not within a discipline, it's cross-disciplinary. So the chemist at the University of Berlin who want to bring in this person is competing with the music school who is in Munich who wants to bring somebody in, and the IJK who wants to bring me in. So the DAAD representatives say it's actually one of the more competitive and prestigious. Why they invited me, I'm not sure. Must have been a low application round for sure. But ultimately, the DAAD funds the university to bring you in basically as a faculty member, right? And so that's what they did. And so I went back for the spring of 2013, again to Hanover, just to give you a sense. Hanover's here kind of in north central Germany. It's on, it's really a nice cross route from Berlin to Amsterdam, also Brussels to Amsterdam. All of the major trains go right through Hanover, and also from Frankfurt to Hamburg. And so unbelievable connectivity to all of Germany. It actually was the king of Great Britain and Ireland came from the House of Hanover. And so there's this lovely palace that's still there. We'll talk about that in a second. Reconstructed medieval area that was unfortunately destroyed during World War II, but a lovely place. In many ways, it's somewhat like Tallahassee in that there's tons of green space. And so great biking and things of this nature. They also have, at least at one time, the largest expo center. They hosted the 2000 World's Fair, and they still host European-based and international trade shows and things of that nature. The IJK is actually located out in this large fairground area called the Expo Center. A little bit about Hanover. So when I was there, what did I do? Well, for the DAAD visiting professor, again, it's a lectureship position. They want you to be in front of students. So I actually taught two classes, a grad class and an undergrad class. Classes that I had taught here at FSU that were a part of their curriculum in Hanover as well. Additionally, I worked with a research team that was headed by me and the director of the program with graduate students, both masters and some of their PhD students or faculty. Met regularly with PhD students almost at a daily basis. We would go to lunch together. I also coordinated some cross-cultural research with my students here at FSU while I was here while I was there and they were here. Also, they asked for me to make connections, other connections there, so I gave talks at the University of Cologne and for Peter down at Mannheim as well. And then the other thing, and this will be one of the last things I talk about, another aspect of the visiting professorship is they want you to be in the community as well, right? So they wanted me to do at least one public lecture. And to be honest, this ended up being one of the coolest things I've ever done, not just as an academic, but in general. The Volkswagen Foundation, the research arm of the Volkswagen company, is located in Hanover. And they put on cultural events at this old palace of the House of Hanover. And they had been in talks with a variety of people about starting a new public lecture series that was set up for evenings. They wanted to have a DJ, they wanted to have an open bar, and they wanted to have people come in and just kind of talk and make academic research accessible to the public. They were going to, the name of the Schloss is the Herrenhausen Schloss. And so Herrenhausen Late is what they ended up calling, like a talk show kind of thing. And they decided that my lecture would be the first one that they did. Right? And so I'm just going to, this is crazy. They sent a team for a 6-hour photo shoot where we did 8 different locations to try to promote. And I mean, these are just some of the shots. The talk that I did was on the appeal, and again, they wanted it to be something that would appeal to a lot of people. The appeal, why do we love crime dramas, right? Hence the, right. And so this is the director of the program now, Christoph Klimt. So the way they wanted to set it up was Christoph and I would be on stage, and it would be kind of a forum. I would speak English, he would speak German. He would do some interpretation, but he would kind of give his own perspective. And so that's what we did. We went that night. They turned people away. There were they had 300 seats. They brought in 300 people were sitting on the floor. It was insane, right? And they had a DJ with an open bar, right? And we up and gave what was really a very cool talk to really introduce kind of the crowd to these kind of conceptual ideas about things that they interact with in their daily life, right? Never would have had an opportunity to do anything like this here in the States, but DAAD offered me the opportunity, and with the Volkswagen Foundation, really put it together, a very cool event. It was all free to the public. In fact, when you came in, they give you a drink coupon too, right? So the first drink was free, right? Yeah, no, it was fantastic. Now the backstory, the follow-up story that I've heard, Mia, is that they kind of shot the wad of money that they had for many of them on that one night. And so the next time they had it, there wasn't a DJ and they weren't giving out coupons. But, so what's happened since then? Well, since 2013, I have invited 3 different visiting scholars to come to FSU and work, mostly on their MA thesis work. Since I went in 2008, we've had a total of 8 German, all of them students, some PhD, but mostly master's students, come to FSU and work with me and work with my students on various projects. It's led to multiple conference presentations, some book chapters, and actually some journal publications. I didn't put that up there, but it's been a very fruitful collaboration, not just for me, but for the students that have been involved as well. The IJK hired one of my PhD students to fill a visiting slot in 2014. Right, so this reciprocal relationship has been quite fruitful. At least it's been fruitful from my side. I hope it has from there as well. So the moral to this story is when somebody asks, when the planet offers you, and the cosmos says, here's an opportunity, if you can, say, yeah, sure, why not? So they have a variety of programs for you as doctoral students, and I think Dr. Everhart's going to introduce you to those, and then tell her about her own experiences. I could just walk around.
Yeah, I'm just going to hold it. I'm just going to, no. Okay, I guess I have to hold this. Okay, so the other side of the opportunities that are available for faculty, and I'm going to also tell you what opportunities are available for doctoral students as well at the end, but is if you want to pursue a research project through DAAD. And I'm going to reiterate what Dr. Rainey said about this FSU Office for Faculty Development. I mean, not only do they list all these awards, but they help you apply. And there's a similar office here on campus for student awards. If you're interested in applying for student Fulbrights or anything like that, they're very helpful. They really want us to get these for the reasons that Dr. Rainey talked about. So the point of the research thing is you can craft whatever you want for your research project. It does take in all fields, and it's sort of the opposite also of what Dr. Rainey said, in that there in Germany, they're competing for people from the US, but you as a researcher are competing against other researchers to go over there. And I just want to tell you about the monetary benefits that you get, and you get a monthly stipend for your research and to live over there. And the amount for, I'm a full professor now, so it was 2150 euros per month, which is about $2,400, which is fine to live over there. You can also, you don't have to go to a university. You can go to an archive, you can go to a library, all these different places that you see. There's several institutes in Germany, research institutes as well, like the Max Planck Institute, for example. Okay, so it's pretty boilerplate what you need to do to apply. You have to do a little research proposal. Fortunately, that's only like 10 pages maximum. You do an online application, and what the important thing for this is that you have to have someone over there that says that they will support you and work with you when you're over there, and you need a letter from the host. So my host was Michael Sadel from Humboldt University. You may have heard of him. He's the dean of the Library and Information Science program at Humboldt University. The iSchools conference was held at Humboldt, I think 2 years ago. It's in Berlin. And so he said he would work with me, and that was fine. Now, there's 2 deadlines, as you can see there, for when you want to go over. And the first one, obviously, is coming up at the end of next week, so there's not much time to apply for that one. But then there is one for May. And these stays go anywhere from 1 to 3 months. It's up to you to decide. I did the whole 3 months. So I started collaborating with some people in Germany back in 2009. There was a call that came out through Elise and said they were looking for faculty who wanted to develop some exchange situations with faculty in Germany, and you had to apply for this. And I did, and I got chosen, and there were 6 of us from different library schools that went over to Germany, and it was sponsored by the Goethe Institute. I've always had a liking for Germany. It's the language I took in high school. I lived in an area of Pennsylvania that was called Pennsylvania Dutch Country, which is really Deutsch, which is really Pennsylvania German. So if there was any language that I could say I was sort of familiar with, it was German. So I went on this study tour, and it was really, really interesting. And one of the things I observed on this tour as we were going around is that there weren't really many school libraries. That was my specialty. There weren't many school libraries. In fact, there were less than 10% of schools, I found out, in Germany have school libraries. And we also went to different universities to look at their LIS programs, and there really weren't any courses for school librarians. So I got thinking, well, are there no courses because there are no school libraries, or are there no school libraries because there are no courses or anything? So I was really interested in this concept of education for school librarianship. And through various exchanges back and forth over the years, I decided I wanted to study this question about, well, let's ask the people in Germany what they think about establishing school library education. And I was interested in different communities, librarians, teachers, LIS faculty, etc. I also wanted to mention, which I didn't on the previous slide, that library science education in Germany is predominantly at the undergraduate level, with the exception of one school, and that is Humboldt. They're the only program that has a master's degree and has doctoral students. So what I did was I did a survey, and I used an instrument called the Stages of Concern questionnaire, and I'm not going to go into all my research, but you can just see I looked at these different groups of public, academic, LIS faculty, etc., and did a scan of what they felt about school library education. They were mostly unconcerned about it, which doesn't mean they were unconcerned, but they basically had other things on their mind. But one of the things that came out was that they really wanted more information about it. Okay, they didn't know much about it, but they wanted more information about school library education. Just some other things I wanted to show you that I thought were kind of interesting. One of the questions was I asked them about their experience with school libraries, and I was really delighted to see that 50% said they know about school libraries and they believe they should be established in Germany. Okay, so I was really surprised at that, because since they weren't school libraries in the schools very much, that a lot of people knew about them anyway. And some did have them, and they visited them when they were a student or as a teacher or volunteer. A couple things about research in Germany in general that I found out. An IRB is not required for social science research, not in Germany, but of course through FSU. But as Michael Sadel told me, he said, unless you are drawing blood from the librarians you're surveying, you don't have to do an IRB over here. So that was kind of refreshing. I use Qualtrics, the online survey software that we have here, and it has a foreign language translator built into it. So you can do your survey in English and it will translate it, but don't accept their word for it. You have to go over it or have someone who knows the language go over it just to be sure that the meaning is getting through. The other thing I found out is Germans are hesitant about filling out surveys and giving out information like that. And it really goes back to the period after World War II, when you had a divided Germany, and there were actually a lot of spies in Germany spying on people. So they really have justification for feeling this way. There's something called the Stasi, which I learned a lot about, and even went to the Stasi Museum, and I got really into watching this show called Deutschland 83, which is all about the Stasi. So anyway, so what was nice is that I had a local contact that was a trusted person in the library community that put the word out for me on a listserv and so forth, and gave her seal of approval on what I was doing. So that was really good. Art had mentioned the different schedules of the universities. This is something I sort of knew about, but didn't plan as well as I should have. They have a different schedule than we have. They had quite a long holiday break at Christmas, and I went over in the beginning of February, but nobody was really coming around to do anything till like the middle of March at Humboldt. So I was kind of there. I mean, I was getting my survey together and making sure the translation and stuff was right. So anyway, that's something I would make sure I changed. Okay, this is my German colleague, Helga. And Helga Me, I don't know if you remember her being here a couple of years ago. There were two school librarians from Germany that Goethe Institute funded to come to the United States and study school libraries, visit school libraries in Tallahassee and Orlando. So what did I do over there besides my survey? This is a professor, Anjay Michel, who's at Potsdam Hochschule, and I think she looks just like Dr. Kazmir. I told her she has a clone in Germany. But I spoke to her class, kind of dark picture. But again, it's an undergraduate class, and it was kind of quite different than what I'm used to. But they were all just a great group. And I also gave the guest lecture I gave in Leipzig was on a Friday afternoon, like at 5 o'clock, and people were there. I couldn't believe it. So. Also met with other German colleagues and doctoral students at Humboldt. And I also I was invited to speak at their national conference. I gave 2 presentations there, their National Library Congress. And it dovetailed with the Leipzig Book Festival. It was like right next door. And I had never been to an international book festival before. Has anybody in here been to one? Oh my gosh, they're amazing. This one was, anyway. It was like 9 buildings, 9 big pavilions, and each one had a different theme. There was one that was just for children. There was a music pavilion. There was one that was all travel materials. There was a Magna one. There, all of this stuff. And I don't have pictures on it, but it was like a Comic Con, and people were all dressed in costumes. And anyway, it was just huge. And their conferences are really good because they have open bars at their conferences. It's great. I also visited libraries, with bookmobiles and other libraries as much as I could, and museums. There was a wonderful Anne Frank Museum in Berlin that was very touching. Also, as Dr. Rainey had said, the train system in Germany is fantastic. You can go anywhere in Europe. But there's also very cheap airlines like EasyJet and Ryanair. And my husband and I went on 2 extended weekend trips, one to London and one to Venice. And each of them, they were under $100 round trip just to go there. So that was a lot of fun. And we were able to make connections, walk to a train about 4 blocks from our apartment, and then it takes you right to the airport. So it was so easy. And traveled within Germany. Berlin is not a real pretty city. It was bombed out during the war, and a lot of things were, built that are kind of from the 50s and industrial looking. So one of the real pretty parts of Germany is in Bavaria. So we had to go down there. Yeah. Yes, the highest mountain in Germany. Mm-hmm. And drove on the Autobahn, which is kind of fun. You can go as fast as you want. Now, one of the things I wanted to show you about this, I got paid through I guess DAAD gave the money to the university, and I'd go in once a month to pick up my money. Now, I assumed they were going to transfer money into my account, but they didn't do that. First of all, it's very hard for an American to get a German bank account, and they don't want to put the money in your American bank account, so they pay you in cash. So I was just like that. I'm walking, I'm going from the train from the university back to my apartment with, 2,200 euros in my purse. But anyway, I just thought that was interesting. The other thing is, I said they give you funding for housing. Here's the street where we lived on. We rented an apartment through Airbnb, very common in Europe. And we probably paid more for an apartment than you needed to, but we really wanted to have somewhere very nice. And we had some people come visit us too, so we had an apartment that was pretty large. But this was in an area of Berlin called Prenzlauer Berg, and this was in the former East Germany. It was an area that didn't get bombed out as much during World War II, and we were about a half mile from the former Berlin Wall. Right there. Just another practical thing. I thought that food was really, really cheap, and organic. I mean, a loaf of bread was like 50 cents, and a quart of milk was like 50 cents, and that was, great living. One of the things about, I said I had German in high school, so that was many decades ago, but I could still read it and understand some of it. But particularly in large cities like Berlin, there's a lot of English things. This English theater had a play. It was one of the funniest things I've ever seen. It was a Nick Hornby play. And in fact, I wanted to practice my German, and people, before I even opened my mouth, I must really look American, and they start speaking English to me, So as much as I wanted to try and use German sometimes I didn't get the opportunity. But, they all learn English from when they're very young and are pretty good at it. Much better than Americans are at foreign languages, let's say. The point of that is that this is something they ask you on your application, and so you just have to think about that. And I explained how I had someone who was going to help me as a contact and so forth. And if you're going to do teaching, was it like that in Hanover that you taught in English?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, mostly all graduate programs are taught in English. Yeah.
In the school that I was at, actually, there's an English requiring to get into the school, so you have to pass an English exam even.
So don't let that stop you, English thing. Okay, so here's some things about doctoral students. I really advise you to go on their webpage because there's a lot of things, but the ones I thought you would be most interested in were these three. One is a research grant for any type of research that you might want to do for 1 to 6 months. They pay you €1,000 per month, and they pay your airfare to go over there. I didn't get my airfare paid to go over there, so you could think about that. Not that I want you to drop out of FSU, but they do have full doctoral programs over there, and in Germany, you do not pay tuition at all. Okay, and everybody's leaving, but no. You don't pay tuition. In fact, a couple of years ago, they started instituting something they called a fee or something, which was like €100, and people flipped out. They thought it was outrageous. And, and I would tell them what it costs to go to school, even at a public university, and they couldn't believe it. So that's something that they have. They also have this doctoral program research grant where they will fund you to work on your dissertation for up to 18 months. Okay, so anyway, the other thing I forgot to mention, which I think is really important, or did I have it here, is that when you fill out your application, if you're doing a research grant for DAAD, is that of course, you tell them what you want to do, but you also have to sit back and reflect and think about what, the German experience is that you can bring back here and how that will enrich you when you come back home. And you really have to be sensitive when you do one of these proposals, in that you can't come across as you're going to go over and fix something, okay, in Germany or any foreign country where you're applying for this. I mean, it has to be really something that is give and take. So what's next? I have an article coming out in their national journal about the research. I'm presenting this to students at Humboldt virtually in their doc seminars. And I'm going to do, I'm the co-editor with Dr. Martis of our international research journal, School Libraries Worldwide. So we're going to do a whole issue about German school libraries, education, etc. And there's actually one school over there that got interested in the work I was doing, and they want to implement school library education. And it's Darmstadt Hochschule, which is a school about 12 miles south of Frankfurt. So we're going to see if we can get that started this summer. Okay. Yeah. All right, so any questions to either of us?
Okay, I've lived overseas. I've lived in streetcar for 3 years. My husband's in the army, and I would go back in a heartbeat. And I've traveled all over Europe. I've also lived in Italy, and there's nothing like living in Germany. The infrastructure there is fabulous. The people are friendly. There is no language barrier. Pretty much everyone knows English. Now that I know this, I'm excited. I'm like, how can I do this? I definitely.
Okay, good.
So you mentioned that your particular interest in the school library wasn't as popular at the time in Germany. Would you think that makes it more competitive or challenging to get into one of those programs if that is your interest, or and you know of any other countries where that interest is?
School libraries? Denmark is probably one of the best countries in the world as far as the quality of their school libraries, nationwide. I think if you have a well-crafted proposal, it doesn't really matter the subject matter. And I don't think the fact that it was school libraries mattered that much, really.
So I was going to suggest to your accusation of burning sounds beautiful, but then I realized, however much I love it there, it's not busy. So what you said about the difference in schedule at the academic year, do you feel like now that you know, like if you go into that knowing it, is it then still like insurmountable, or not insurmountable, but how much of the problem was just that you weren't aware of it?
It was that I wasn't aware of it. I mean, if I had to do it again, I'd probably go over like in late March. And I mean, you could possibly swing it that you could do it like in our summer semester, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. I think right. I think most universities operate this way, where they have a lecture period, right, which is really the first 3 months of the semester. And then there's a writing period, and then there's a break. And so, right, the faculty are really around April, May, June, delivering lectures. And then the students are writing their final paper in July. There is no lecture. And so the faculty are mostly around. And then vacation comes around, which is really the grading period, right? And so, you've just got to be cognizant of, if you want to interact with students, then you really have to be there during the lecture period.
And if there's the expectation of teaching,
Right.
Is that expectation tied to the lecture period or the whole,
Yeah.
the whole thing?
No, just the lecture period for me. Although, right, I stayed for most of the writing period too. I was there through July as well, right? But because there's not a match here, again, if you end up doing any kind of teaching experience, or you're trying to do research in conjunction with their lecture period, by working it out with FSU schedule can be a little tricky. I had to do a little finagling to leave April 1st, knowing that our school, I was still teaching a class for a month. So some online classes, graduate RA or TA took up some of the things, but you just have to work those things out.
And because, you know, this is something that's on the prestigious list, they really work with you. In fact, you know, I wasn't here in the spring semester, and I was just planning on teaching online from over there. But my schedule was rearranged that I did an overload in the fall, and so I didn't really have any classes last spring. So that worked out really well. And the other thing about the being on the prestige list, which is we didn't mention, again, is money.
Right.
Is, and thanks to Art, he got this on the prestige list. So if I didn't even know, and I applied for it, but you get, now it's a $2,500 boost to your salary for faculty. It used to be $5,000. But they just changed it this year to $2,500. We got under the wire.
So successful.
Yeah.
So many faculty were getting these awards, and like, oh, we don't have that much money, I don't think, right? So they changed it.
So did you think this is a full-time?
No, I mean, well, what I'm doing is trying to now, but like not at the same time. I mean, I have this study, and I've applied for a Fulbright to do this work with Darmstadt, but.
I think you could link the work with a sabbatical
Yeah.
here at FSU, right, fairly easily. Right.
Yeah, in fact, my intent was to apply for a Fulbright, and I went to the Office of Faculty Advancement, and they said, well, you want to go to Germany. This is really more specific to Germany. Why don't you do this one?
Mm-hmm.
So,
You have to be a citizen.
I think so.
Right, or Canadian, right? It's North America.
You are, aren't you? Yeah. Yeah, you are.
And there's no limit, right? How many times you
Not that I've seen.
Um,
can work?
Well,
You have
like for the
to-
research fellowship.
Yeah,
I think there are, yeah.
you can, you have to, there's no limit, but you have to let 3 years elapse between applications. But, yeah. They actually even have a category called, it's not called revisits, but something like that, recurring visit or something. So I think it's a little easier to go back.
All right, thank you so much.
No, thanks for the opportunity.